Welcome back to Cheeky Mare Stitches. We are continuing our machine piecing of the Pink Doors Queen of Diamonds. Sorry, I haven't posted a video in a couple of days. I had a busy week with some company over at my house, and then I had some electrical problems. So now everything's back to normal, so I should be getting back to a regular filming schedule. Anyway, so today we are going to be doing blocks 2-1 and 2-2. So here is Tula Pink's version that we are going to be mimicking today. And here is what it originally looked like. So like we did last time, we're going to find a way to not have Y seams, because the original one, you would have a Y seam here and here. Here are my fabrics. And as you can see in Tula's version, she had a stripe for the side trapezoids here. I didn't have that stripe, but I really liked the look of it, and I didn't have one that was completely like similar to it enough for my liking, so I made one. And what I did was I took 3 1-inch strips, 2 light and 1 dark, and then 2 like 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch strips, sewed them on in the dark, and then sewed them in a strip set, and then cut my pieces out of that. I did try to line up the stripes, but like the vertical stripes, but I wasn't too worried about it if it didn't exactly match up, because I really just want the effect. So then let's lay this out. And I pressed half the seams towards the pink and half of the seams towards the reddish, so that they would nest when I lined them up. So that'll help me to get that'll ease my connections. That'll make it easier for me to match these intersections when I put this row together. All right. All right. So let's go back to the original one. To eliminate the Y seams, we are going to make these 2 diamonds 2 triangles instead. And I picked this red dot because Tula Pink's version, the first sashing is red. So I wanted to kind of emphasize the red in it. I wanted to use the hedgehog, but I also wanted to emphasize red. And I wanted to pick a print that would be easy, like it wouldn't be terribly noticeable to see that that it wouldn't be terribly noticeable that this was a diamond that was supposed to be cut, that wasn't originally supposed to be cut in half. Okay, so that's why I chose this. I picked this one up here to kind of add in some of the cool tones that are in the hedgehog, but it's still kind of red orangey. And then I picked these 2 because it had that kind of, you can see that? I picked this one because it had, again, the teal in the hedgehog and the orange and red pink tied in. All right, so that's why I picked those fabrics. Now, to get the sub-assemblies, the first 2 sub-assemblies will be the easy ones and fairly obvious ones. It's making a triangle, so that will be the first two. So what do we ask ourselves? Where can I find a row, like horizontal lines that I can separate? And because we've made this diamond into two triangles, we can separate this. So now we have two sub-assemblies that are just mirror images of each other. So now how do we create this? The sub-assembly, we look for diagonal lines that go all the way across, and these will do that. Or we could make 3 triangles as well. All right, so now that we've discovered our assemblies, then let's go over to the sewing machine and get this sewn up. We are ready to sew block 2-1, and I am going to get the triangle sub-assemblies done first. And remember, we're using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're using the cutting templates like I am from Pink Door Fabrics. If you're using the English paper pieced patterns with an 1/4 ruler, you will use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But I like the templates because they have the engineered corners, which means I don't have to cut off dog ears, which I enjoy quite a bit. All right, so there are 2 sub-assemblies done. Now we will lay out the block, and I think I'm going to put the hedgehog that's facing us on top. And I, again, am not sponsored by Pink Door Fabrics. I just like their business quite a bit. Now, there is a direction in the dot print where it looks better, more intentional. If you put them together, let's have both hands here. So if you put them together like this, the pattern kind of flows better. But because these are 60-degree triangles, if you put them like this, then the pattern looks a little wonky. So I didn't fussy cut this fabric, but there is a direction that looks better. So I'm going to make sure that I put them in the direction that looks better when I put them together. Sometimes that takes a second to figure out which one is which. And if you cut a fabric that you can't really tell, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. I was listening to one of the quilting podcasts that I watch on YouTube here, and she does beautiful work. Her channel is the CATBIRD Quilts. Cathy Martin. She does beautiful, beautiful quilts. And I love watching her. But her process and my process are very different. She loves the meticulousness of starching and pinning and accurate cutting and all that stuff. And I do some of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I make sure that when I'm fussy cutting things, that I fussy cut them fairly well. And I take my time. But I do not enjoy starching. I do not enjoy using finicky fabrics. I don't really even like ironing. I iron more for YouTube than I do in my normal practice. But she was saying something about how one of her patrons had sent her a whole bunch of her fabric because she just discovered that she didn't like the idea and the process of quilting. And that made me really sad. Like, if just because you don't or you don't enjoy the quilting process like Cathy Martin does, who again makes beautiful and probably more show-worthy quilts than I do, because she cares more about perfect piecing and starching and cutting on the bias and pinning and all that stuff. And that's great. I like knowing those rules, because once I know the rules, I know where and how I can break them a little bit. So understanding where quilters of the past came from is a good thing. And Cathy does a great job honoring that. But if I had to quilt and do every step like she does, I wouldn't quilt either. And so I'm giving you permission to, if you came across my channel and are not sure that you would enjoy quilting, that I hope my channel gives you another look into the world of quilting that shows that you don't have to be super perfect and super exact to enjoy the process and make a beautiful thing that will keep you warm. So, but please do go over to Cathy Martin's channel. She's the CATBIRD Quilts, and look at the beautiful things that she does and see the process that she goes through, and strive to be more like her. I strive to be more like her, but I also don't fret if I'm not. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and let's get back to the sewing. Anyway, so I laid out my prints. I cut them into sub blocks, or I separated them into sub assemblies. And now I'm ready to stitch. These are our sub assemblies. And it's easy enough. We're ready to go. So let's start with the chalk. The point is, enjoy your hobby the way you enjoy it. Cathy likes to do all the fussy stuff. And although I am also a process quilter, that's why I don't mind having 10 whips going. I am a process stitcher, but the processes I like are different than the processes that Cathy likes. And both of us can learn something from each other. That's why I enjoy watching her channel, because I learn something from her and can appreciate just how perfect things can look if you decided to be more finicky than I am. Just wanted to make sure that I was doing this right, because I don't want to rip out. And I am. So do that. See how and I cut these and then press the seams open so you can cut those little dog ears off. See how the engineered corners fit so nicely in there? It's wonderful. That's why I like. And you can tell right here that I've got some of the salvage in my piece. That's okay, because it is in the seam line. So I saved a little bit of waste by cutting into the salvage. And I'm using the engineered corners. See how this corner matches up with this seam, to make sure that things are gonna nest. There we go. Look at that point where I lined up the engineered corners. Beautiful. There we go. Okay, so let's do the second sub-assembly. You can put the bottom one up so you know which way you're going here. And then I have matched the opposite because I created my own striped fabric. I'm putting the oppositely pressed part on the same side so that they'll nest. But if you use just a regular fabric, you won't have to do that. All right, so I've made sure those are correct. Now I can make, and I'm going to show you, like, you can do it this way as well. Instead of doing the parallel lines, you can do it as a triangle with two. I did that way on the other side, so I'm going to do it the opposite way so that they'll nest. There we go. Now put this one on. Cute. This fabric doesn't really go, but I like it. I'm a big fan of adding purple in almost everything. All right, there are the two halves. Now we'll put them together, nesting the seams where we can. Because we did some opposite pressing, they nest beautifully. See how they nest? In fact, having these made striped fabrics are gonna maybe make it easier to line them up. All right, let's see how that looks. Beautiful. Pretty good. All right, now we're ready for block number 2-2. Here is what it originally looked like, and here is what Tula Pink's version looked like. It's on the, it has more yellow in it, yellow and pink in it, but the sashing, as you can see around here, is an orangey color, like a salmon color. So I'm going to focus more on that. As you can see on Tula Pink's version, she kind of ombre fussy cut these diamonds and triangles. I had that fabric, but I did not have enough of it to do that particular effect. And I also am going to cut these 6 diamonds in half to avoid Y seams. So to kind of honor Tula's version, I did use that fabric and ombre fussy cut it somewhat in another part of the block. All right, so let's lay this out. I'm going to lay out the top triangle subassembly shown here first so that we can focus on the hexagon shape in the middle. So here are the two subassemblies, one for the top and one for the bottom. This needs to turn around, actually. All right, so here are the two subassemblies for the triangle for the top and bottom. And those are easy because it already makes a horizontal line. So we're just going to remove those and set up the fairly elaborate hexagon shape. Right. So I picked this orangey pink solid because I knew I was going to be cutting the diamonds in half. And I didn't really want to fussy cut another print. So I thought that this, because it's too red to be pink, but it's too yellow to be pink, but it's too pink to be yellow. So I thought it was a good compromise, kind of emphasizing the sunbeam, making it kind of look a little bit like a lion's mane. And there we go. All right, so this is our very complex centerpiece. And we're trying to figure out how not to make a Y seam. And here's where I honored Tula's fussy cut ombre look, but didn't use as many as I would have needed to do it the way she did it. So what is the first thing we're looking for? We're looking for horizontal lines that we can make. And that is here. So there are our subsections, or sub-assemblies. Now with this one, so that we don't have a Y seam, we need to find some horizontal, or some diagonal, or with this subassembly here, we need to find some diagonal lines that go all the way across. That is here and here. And these subassemblies can be made in a lot of different ways. All right, so the only difficult part will be to make sure that I get my ombre pieces in the right order when I'm assembling the subassemblies and lining up the stripes when I sew these seams. All right, but luckily most of the stripes that are lined up are still in the same subassembly. So now we are getting ready to go back, or now we're going back to the sewing machine to sew up block 2-2. Let's get the middle subassembly figured out. Make sure that you get the ombre fabrics in the correct order. We're going to start with the top triangle subassemblies here because those are the easy ones, and I get some of the pieces out of the way. There's one. That's for the bottom. There's two. That's for the top. And I was showing you there that you need to make sure if you fussy cut the flowers, that they need to be right side up, with one with a point pointing down and one with a point pointing up. I am also explaining here that there is a direction. I didn't fussy cut these, but there is a direction. And so I'm lining up the horizontal lines in the fabric. And it's taken me a while. All right. So now I think we're ready to sew. Yep, and here we go. I chain pieced those because they're fairly easy. All right, now we're going to get on with the sub-assemblies, the harder, more difficult sub-assemblies. It looks like we're going to start with the middle one. And again, I'm lining up my ombre fabrics. There we go. Making sure the lines line up in the correct orientation. And there we go. So we've done the horizontal cut to do for the Y seams. Now we're going to figure out the sub-assemblies by finding the diagonal lines. Here, here, and there. We're going to start with the lion. All right, lion's done. We'll go on to the next assembly. We want to make sure that we don't sew the wrong order, because we could end up with a Y seam even though we cut the two extra triangles. So we're gonna try to find a horizontal line similar to what we did to get the bigger pieces. Now we'll sew. Now we've got a straight line instead of a Y seam. Excellent. We're going to add this one here. Okay. All right, we've put the lines together. We're nesting the engineered corners, and we're making sure the lines line up. See, you can see the engineered corners in the seam line, and we can pin a little bit for the lines just to double check that they're going to be as lined up as possible. We'll open it up. And not too bad. Not too bad if I say so myself. We're gonna finger press those. And now make sure it lines up with our lion. I'm gonna do similar checks with the engineered corners. So, and finger press. There we go. Corners match pretty well. Now we'll do the next side here, similar to how we did it previously. Making sure I sewed it right there. Making sure those seams nest. Pretty good. Let's add it to the lion now. Finger press, and look at that pretty lion. I've matched up my seams my lines pretty well. Second one was better than the first. Now let's use the middle to line up the next subassembly. All right, there's our subassembly. Now we're gonna we've done the horizontal lines again, and now we're gonna find our diagonal lines. And I'm telling you something that I don't know that I'm telling you. All right, there's one triangle, there's a line, there's another triangle there. We're gonna do similar things to what we did in the past. I'm really not sure what I'm telling you. All right, here we go. Probably making sure that the lines up. I'm trying to chain piece a little bit as well, which if I remember correctly turned out not the best because of the different angles, but we figure it out in the end. Yep, see, I'm struggling there. You're seeing the inner workings. Yep, be careful when you chain piece. Constantly double checking that I've got the right orientation. I haven't used a seam ripper yet. All right, there's the first the top half there so we can add it to the lion. We're going to nest our seams as best we can. See, I'm making sure those seams nest there a little bit. Putting some fullness in where I need it to be so that it matches. And there we go. Pretty good. Now we'll add the top on. And now you'll finish the next subassembly that's underneath. That's very similar to the last one we just did. Making sure the ombre is in the correct orientation. Make sure those stripes are in the right orientation, man. All right, so I've shown you those. Now you'll just sew them together like I should have. And that is where my video cut off. Here's the finished block 2-2. I hope this commentary wasn't too bad. You do what you have to, so I didn't have to re-film it. But if you've liked what you've seen today, please like and subscribe and join me for the next video when we tackle the set of 3 blocks. Have a good day. Bye-bye.